Torah.
Amen. Oh, all right. So this is the Parshat, it's Tetzaveh, and it's a continuation of the description. Right before it was about building the Mishkan. So the word Mishkan comes from shachen, which means to dwell. A shachen is a neighbor, a shikun is a neighborhood. The Mishkan is the dwelling place. It was the traveling tent or dwelling place, like the portable temple in the desert that the Israelites carried, around for 40 years. I have no idea why in English it's called the tabernacle. I don't know why that's called, but it's very confusing that it's the tabernacle, but it's the Mishkan. And it's very beautiful, and people contributed beautiful cloth and linen and dyes and gold and silver and made beautiful ornaments for it. And in fact, I don't know if you know this, but when the rabbis were trying to decide on Shabbat, where it says, do not work on Shabbat, it says 6 days you shall work, on the seventh day you rest and you do no work. The rabbis were saying, what do they mean by work? What is considered work? And they looked at all the preparation for the Mishkan and determined that there were 39 things that were done to build the Mishkan because it was holy work. And they also said that work for Shabbat means creating or destroying something. In other words, if you make something, like if you light a fire, there was no fire, that's creation. And if you put out a fire, that's destroying, that's changing the state of something. But if like Orthodox people, you can have a flame going on, a low flame for the whole time. If you turn it on before Shabbat and keep it on, it's fine. And then, but you can't turn things on or turn things off. So anyway, they discovered 39 forms of work based on how the Mishkan was constructed. So that's just an interesting side effect. And in this Parsha, they talk a little bit about the Menorah. And we know the Menorah was, I don't think I realized there was actually a Menorah or a light in the Mishkan. We know there was one in the temple. And in our own sanctuary at the Glazer campus and the mural, you can see the Romans carrying off the menorah after the destruction of the second temple. So anyway, I have the text for us to share, and I have questions. And then what's really interesting, they talk about the priestly vestments, the clothing of the priests. And I actually have a picture of it, and we can talk about it. So I'm going to share right now. Where do I share screen? And here it is. And I'm sharing. And we see. So first part, it just starts with the menorah. So let's just read about the menorah and talk about that for a second. So who would like to read just this section about the light?
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
You want to start? Is it starting with this week?
Yes.
Okay. This week, the Torah portion continues with the details of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. The focus is on the clothing worn by the priests and the high priest, the inaugural rituals and services which were to be done at the opening of the tabernacle, and details of some of the vessels and offerings in the tabernacle. God commands, you shall command the sons of Israel to use pure olive oil for kindling the light of the lamps. Aaron shall set up this light to burn continuously in the sanctuary. It will serve as a light for God for all generations. The menorah, light,
it should be
this is the symbol of God.
This is the menorah. I left out a word.
Oh, okay. This is the menorah. Light is the symbol of God because it illuminates and makes us aware of the beauty of the world, which reminds us of God's presence. Olive oil, because the olive branch was a sign of peace.
So this idea that light, there's an interesting commentary that you can't really see light. You can only see things in light. And what do you see in light? You see the world, you can see the beauty of the world. Just like you can't see God, you can see the results of God's creation, is the idea of having a light. But we know there's a ner tamid in every synagogue. This is from this actual this verse, that there's always a light. So you think about it, and also reminds us of the Hanukkah story when they needed olive oil, because here they tell us it has to be pure olive oil, no other oil. But does the light, are you aware when you go into a synagogue of the Ner Tamid? Do you notice it? Do you think about it? Risa, you're raising your hand. Nodding your head. Tell me.
I always do. It's the first thing I look at is how the particular congregation has translated that into art, which is what it usually is. So I look for it. I like to check to see if it's a live light or a light bulb, and it centers me into where I am. It's always the first thing I look at. Make sure if it's a light bulb or a light, that it's been lit, and I'll be the first one to tell somebody if it's out.
Yes, and it's right over the ark, right? It's hanging.
It's right. It's center.
It's kind of a little mini Mishkan. The ark, or the word ark is also a completely crazy word in English. In Hebrew, it's Aron HaKodesh, which really means like the holy cabinet. Aron is like really, which it is. It's a holy cabinet because we keep the Torah in there. And in the Mishkan and in the temple itself, the Holy of Holies, the center of the sanctuary, was the real ark, the ark that carried the 10 Commandments originally, the tablets and whatever. It was this. You saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, so you know what it looked like. Sort of a beautiful box with arm poles out of gold, with two angels facing each other, cherubs, the Chruvim, the cherubim. So yes, so the light is like a symbol that we always have. And that's like when you build a synagogue, one of the first, you need a Torah and you need that Ner Tamid. The rest, is just, as Risa said, art. Okay, so now I want to go.
Rabbi, is that called the eternal light?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is the eternal light, because it is always on. It should always be on. I'm trying to think if I can make this bigger. I feel like I'm missing people. So cool. I don't know. Oh, all right. Anyway, I don't know. All right. So the priestly vestments. Now, if you look below, I've got a picture of them that we're going to look at in a minute. But now there's this whole section where God goes into incredible detail. This is like a summary almost, with some quotes, because it goes on for several pages of exactly what they should be wearing, what it should be made of, the kind where there should be gold and where there should be cloth and where there should be colors and whatever. And so let's just look at this. And some of it has magical powers. There's a part of the high priest's clothing. Oh, Miriam, mute yourself. Okay. Okay. Now she has to mute herself. So Douglas, why don't you read some of this? Douglas, you want to read? No, you don't want to read. Ben, you want to read? Okay.
I'll give it a shot, Rabbi.
Okay.
Have Aaron and his sons serve me as priests.
Okay, by the way, the word, again, priests, it's a Kohen. We call it a Kohen in Hebrew. And the plural is Kohanim. Go ahead.
Make for them sacred garments using fine linen, gold and blue, purple and scarlet yarns. Make for them a breastplate and ephod, thank you, a robe, a tunic of checkered work, and a sash. These garments must always be worn when officiating in my sanctuary.
Okay, go on.
For Aaron's
Ephod.
Take two lazuli and engrave them in gold, on them the names of the tribes of Israel. Thus Aaron shall carry their names over his heart before God as a remembrance.
Okay, so the ephod is this checkered like apron with straps. That's the ephod. It's a kind of a covering, or part of the level. So this is the ephod right here. This multicolored
The chest plate?
apron.
No, not the apron.
Oh, the apron. Oh, down below. Oh, okay.
And it has straps in the back, if you see in the back. And in the front, it has gold. These are gold straps. Okay, so go on. That's the ephod.
Okay, I think I'm here. In the sanctuary, Aaron shall wear a pure gold breastplate of judgment with engraved stones representing the tribes of Israel.
Okay, and here is the breastplate, if you see it, in the front. Okay, so you're wearing this. So it's like, okay, go on.
And you shall place in the breastplate the judgment, the Urim, and the
Okay, it's
Tumim.
Urim and the Tumim.
and they shall be on Aaron's heart when he comes before. Can you scroll up or down? Before God, and Aaron shall carry the judgment of the children of Israel on his heart before God always.
Okay, so the Urim and the Turim, it's not clear where they are. It may be underneath. And the Urim and the Turim is a mystical, magical thing that we're going to read a whole thing about. But this is going to help him judge people. So Aaron, the high priest, is actually going to be a judge, is what we're learning from this. And it's a very elaborate costume or uniform, we could say. Okay. Who wants to read? Merle, why don't you read Aaron's robe? Oops. Aaron's robe for officiating. Right here. But you're muted. Merle, you're muted.
Got it. All right. Aaron's robe for officiating will be pure turquoise wool with bells of gold all around. In this way, the sound of the bells can be heard when the priest comes into the Lord's sanctuary and when he goes out, so that he may not die. For Aaron's forehead, you shall make a breastplate of pure gold inscribed with "Holy to the Lord." Thus Aaron shall bring forgiveness for sins in which a sacred offering is offered. Make tunics, sashes, and turbans of fine embroidered linen for the sons of Aaron to give them dignity and glory. Anoint them and invest them with the full authority to serve me as priests. They shall only wear linen when serving me officially.
Okay, so if you look at the whole thing, there's on the very underneath is like a robe, this white robe that you see the sleeves and you see at the very bottom. And then underneath that, which it's written in the Torah, but I didn't put it in, there would be linen pants. So you're wearing pants, and then this tunic of turquoise with the bells, and then the ephod over it with the breastplate. And then you see the gold on the headdress at the top over his forehead where it says "Holy to the Lord." So this is how, and I'm sure he had shoes, but he's not. Probably. So this is how they dressed, and everything had a meaning. So can you, we're supposed to help people or help you fight against a certain sin, and symbolic of fighting or proscribing or defending against a sin. So what do you think the breastplate of judgment would be defending you against? What would you think?
Anything that you might do wrong.
Well, okay. So it says to prevent the miscarriage of justice. Okay, I'm going to tell you these because I want to go to other discussion.
Well,
the breastplate of the ephod, which was also used to decorate idols, would protect against idolatry. The fringe tunic, now this is the one with the little bells and everything. That was the same word used for Joseph's many-colored coat, would protect against bloodshed, because Joseph's brothers nearly killed him because of his tunic. And the robe, the white, is the protections of inchastity, and the linen trousers. And then finally, the headdress was a protection against prideful, arrogant thoughts. So all of this had meaning and power for the priests. But now I want to talk about something else, which is, and we can stop share for a minute. How do I stop share? Do I just pause share?
Yeah, just yeah.
I don't know.
This doesn't say stop share, it says pause share. No, that's not it. Stop share. Okay. Let's talk about the power. Oh, hi, Penina. Did you want to say something? Go ahead. You're muted.
Okay. All righty. The word, is that okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. The word is actually pronounced ephod because it's a proper name, and you
Right.
can, yeah,
In
and you
English.
cannot like make it English
Okay.
and read it as ephod because the word is ephod.
Thank you.
And as far as the Urim and Tumim, they're supposed to make light and justice. Tam
Right,
is
but there's more to it.
Tumim come from the word tam is somebody who doesn't have no damage, no fault
Purity.
with
Purity.
him.
Purity, yes.
So, and that's all. But the main thing is that it kind of like crinkled my ear was the word
I'm sorry,
ephod.
ephod. Thank you. By the way, did anybody here, I went to Yale graduate school. Did anybody here go to Yale? They have their crest or their symbol is like an emblem, and it says in Hebrew, Urim v'Tumim.
Right.
It means
Wow.
a light, lux e veritas, that it says in Latin, which means light and truth or purity. But we're going to look at, I have a whole description about what they were. They were magical. They were supposed to be able to answer questions by lighting up in a certain way. But before we do that, I just want to talk about the power of clothing and the way that you're affected. So first of all, do you feel differently when a rabbi is wearing a tallis or a white robe or even a suit versus when you see them, if they would be dressed more casually? Would that affect you differently, do you think, in terms of the rabbi? Merle, you're saying no?
I mean, I grew up watching rabbis wear robes, but when they went to wearing a talit and a suit, or a talit, a sports jacket, or whatever, is going on from day to day, I never had a problem with it. I always thought that the robes look wrinkled and uncomfortable.
But what about if they were wearing like just a shirt and jeans?
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think that's like too casual.
It's
like that's not, it's like, it's like to dress respectfully.
To dress respectfully. Do you think that, does anybody else have a response to that? Cindy?
To me, the dressing makes it that you're at something special. This is holy, and it separates it from, especially a Shabbat service. It separates it from the other days where you might see them in casual dress. So to me, it's very important. And when I go to Friday night services, I try to wear something nicer and special.
Yeah.
Right. Well, do you think, okay, I want to tell you a funny story. When I first started at Wilshire Boulevard Temple and I led a service, I wore this really beautiful, I thought, sweater. It was like a cardigan, but it had gold embroidery in it and everything and whatever. And Steve Leader got a complaint about the way I was dressed, that I was too informal. And, he said, you have to wear a jacket, at least. But how do we respond? Do we respond differently when we see a uniform? I mean, do you think, I guess it's an obvious, when we see a policeman in a uniform, we respond differently than when we see a person casually dressed. So clothing has a lot of power. Do you think that, so how should I say this? Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that there should be a separation? Do you think, certainly the communists, Mao made everybody wear the exact same thing to symbolize that we're all the same. So what do you think about like formal or different clothing or uniforms to differentiate people? Do you think it's helpful? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it makes people more arrogant or think they have more power than they do? Are we intimidated by the kind of uniforms or clothing? Penina.
I think it puts you in the mood, literally. It pours over to the audience. If you're wearing something in white, like for Rosh Hashanah, it's like to symbolize a slate, like a clean slate, like white, like we're starting all over again. It tells you something. It puts you in the mood. So I like it when they do, when they come Saturdays or Friday night dressed up. I think it, like I said, it puts you in the right mood.
Okay, Risa.
I miss the robes terribly, especially because of what happened when they removed the robes, and women in particular were subject to exactly what you said, which was they were watched for what they were wearing. We even had a cantor in one congregation who had like, I don't know how many, let's say 8 pairs of shoes, identical shoes, heels, but they were all different colors. She wore which one she wanted. She was criticized for constantly having the same color shoes. She was criticized because her skirts didn't lie in a straight line on her body. I hated every time it was discussed. And it's still a topic of conversation at Wilshire Boulevard in the congregation and notes to Steve about what some of the women are wearing. So
women clergy.
Yeah, I mean clergy on the pulpit.
And the length of their skirts.
The length of the skirt, the whatever you call it, English say that it all gets talked about and reported. And I'm guilty of it too. Just put a robe on and leave me alone.
May I say something? I think modesty. I think all the women at Wilshire Boulevard Temple dress impeccably. And I think what's in your heart is important, and people shouldn't judge so harshly. These women are modest and holy and decent and respectable and high fidelity.
Okay, but what about you? Do you feel you need to dress differently when you go to different occasions? What about you going? I mean, there are people who come to temple in jeans and t-shirts, whatever. Do you think that's appropriate, or do you think it matters? And what about do you wear certain things to create something within yourself? Does it change you when you wear certain things? I'm curious about that. Merle.
Okay.
So several years ago, when we were all in person in temple, I was criticized because this woman came up to me and told me two things. One, I don't dress appropriately for my age. Probably 69 or 70. Oh, wait. And that as a synagogue professional, when I was still working, I should dress more appropriately. And somebody, I think it was our rabbi at the time, said, she's got some health issues and a deformed body, and she can't wear slacks and anything with a waistband, and she can't wear certain kinds of dresses, but she's dressed appropriately for what she, I'm clean. I was dressed up, but I was wearing leggings and appropriate. I wasn't there in my Converse sneakers. But to go with what Risa said about people complaining, we had a cantor here in Phoenix that the congregants complained about the color nylon she wore.
Okay, but I'm asking now about you.
For me, if I know that I'm dressed up, I came home from doing something this morning and changed my clothes so that when I go to services tonight, I'm dressed appropriately.
Okay, are there other times that people dress up, not just to go to services in your life?
Yeah, depending on where, depending on what where I'm going or I'm going to dress up for theater tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, anyone else? I mean, now, actually, this is very interesting. Because if you read Rabbi Bo Shapiro, who's a lot younger than I am, his message was, why can't we just show who we really are? Why do we need to dress up? Why do we need to put on makeup? Why can't we just reveal who we are and accept each other for who we are? And I have always loved getting dressed up, putting on makeup, I'm at home. I still do my nails. I like to see my own nails polish on my hands. I put on makeup. When I'm feeling down, I will put on makeup to say, okay, it's an armor for me. But I'm curious about other of you. We've been sitting at home for 2 years. Do you ever do something just for yourself to change your mood in terms of your clothes?
Every day.
Yes.
Okay, I want to hear from like the men. Brad, do you? You're
You're
muted.
muted. There you go.
I don't have a comment about this discussion.
You have no comment. Well, do you think that uniform or formal wear or, what's the word, ritual wear is important and necessary? Like the priests are given very elaborate instructions of what to wear. Do you think that's necessary or important? Do you think it makes
You asking personally, I think it's irrelevant.
You think it's irrelevant? You would, if the rabbi, we have a rabbi. If the rabbi were giving the Yom Kippur sermon in like jeans and a t-shirt, it would make no difference to you.
No difference to me.
That's very interesting. Okay.
I
Anyone?
wouldn't let him.
What'd you say,
I
Reese?
said I wouldn't let him.
You
I wouldn't let him on the pulpit,
wouldn't let him on the pulpit.
especially if it was Stanley. Out.
But
I listened to
But he
Stanley
loves to
this
get dressed.
morning.
now there's
Yeah.
another kind of clothing which has become extremely, let's put it this way. People are really questioning themselves, which is, as a Jew, wearing a kippah in public, wearing a Jewish star or a mezuzah in public, or even having a mezuzah on your door, which is a kind of a ritual. That's not clothing, so we won't go there. But like wearing Jewish identity, some kind of symbol of your Jewish identity in public. How do you feel about that? Are you willing to do it? Do you feel it's dangerous? Do you feel that you have an obligation to do it? I mean, I know in my neighborhood, because there is an obligation if you're Orthodox to wear tzitzit, the fringes, and they're hanging out, and kippot. In my neighborhood, I live in Pico Robinson. There are lots of Robertson. There are people walking around with kippot, tzitzit, and yet, like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, somebody came through our neighborhood and threw eggs on everybody's cars, including mine. And it seems like it was a very anti-Semitic act because it was just in our neighborhood. And I didn't even know. I thought it was personal until I went to the car wash and they told me how many other cars had come in that day with eggs. So what do you feel about the necessity or the obligation to wear Jewish ritual clothing in public?
May I speak?
Just a second, Cindy, and then Donna.
Okay.
I think the biggest value of Judaism is life. And if you're endangering your life by being in an environment and your life would be in danger by doing something, I think there's an exception to wearing it. I mean, I have a Shema bracelet, which to me is always with me, but very subtle. But I know, when men wear the tzitzit or a kippah, unfortunately in today's day and age, it could be dangerous.
Okay, Donna?
I agree with, that's what I was going to say. It depends on where you're at and if it's safe. And I used to wear my little pyramid with the God's name on it, and I took it off, wear my butterfly now because I actually, it's just the world is getting more scary for us, and I want everyone to be safe. So I agree with what Cindy said. It depends on what's going on, and I pray we're all safe. But I got a 1950s bathing suit.
I was thinking also about like royalty, like the crown, like or the Queen of England or kings and queens, and the only thing that gives them power really is their clothing, because otherwise you wouldn't even know who they were. They're just normal people, but it's this crown and this gold, and it's always been historically a way to elevate people or invest power in them through clothing. And there's a midrash about how God clothed, we don't hear about it, but this is all midrash, when God expelled Adam and Eve from the garden, he clothed them, he gave them clothing. And this idea of now God giving clothing or commanding clothing to the priests who are going to serve him, this idea that clothing affects, I would imagine that as a high priest, when you put this on, you're supposed to feel different than the rest of the time. And not only do people feel different when they see you, but it actually invests in you some kind of responsibility, a burden, an obligation through this clothing. So, okay, so I want to continue.
I have one question. Does the ephod has the 12 tribes or the 10 commandments on them? I think it's the 12 tribes.
12 tribes, I think.
12 tribes.
Yeah.
Okay. Tribes.
Okay, so here we go.
Modesty,
All right.
modesty,
About the clothing and all right. So now, and we talked about this. So now I'm going to go over here. Now, there's also an anointing of the priests. They have to wear these clothes. And this was the first time that they were ever priests, that the first time they were going to be like wearing these clothes. There's an anointing. And this anointing is also what in medieval Europe, and even today, how you anoint a king or queen is similarly with oil, which you have here, but there's more to it. There's blood in this. So this is like how do you make somebody holy or sanctify them? They have to go through this ritual. So who would like to read? Cindy, you want to read this? Here is how to sanctify Aaron.
Here is how to sanctify Aaron and his sons as priests. God continues, first, prepare a young bull and 2 rams without blemish and some matzah bread and matzah cakes kneaded with oil. Have Aaron and his sons bathe, then dress in their holy garments. Place the anointing oil upon Aaron's head. Then Aaron and his sons will bring the bull and the basket with the matzah bread to the front of the tent of appointed meeting. They shall hold the bull as it is slaughtered before God. Take some of the bull's blood and with your finger place blood on the elevated corners of the altar and its base. Parts of the bull will burn at the altar, while other parts shall burn in the fire outside the camp. This is an offering that clears sin.
One more.
Slaughter a ram and take some of its blood and put it on the ridge of Aaron's right ear and on the ridges of his sons' ears and on the thumbs of their right hands and on the big toes of their right feet, and dash the rest of the blood against every side of the altar round about. What does this do?
Okay, what could this possibly mean? It's very specific. Blood on the ear, ridge of your ear, your thumb, and your toe, your big toe. What could that mean? And I mean, I remember reading it.
Do they have GPS here or doing your?
So what symbolism could this mean? And also, what do you think the symbolism of the blood means? Why is blood, there's a lot of blood in this. Dash blood all around it, dash blood on the corners. So what could that mean?
I forget the oil part. I'm not sure I understand why, unless it has to do with the fact that this animal has been sacrificed on behalf of you to anoint you.
Okay, but it is on you, but it's all, but why the thumb, the ear, and the toe?
Those are the stronger parts of your body. Your right arm is supposed to be the stronger part, but it's not the closest. But your left arm is the closest to your heart.
Well, so, but your ear, your thumb.
I have an answer.
Okay, yeah.
Because of what we hear, what we say, and where we step and where we stand. What you hear, what you touch, and where you stand and how you walk.
Well, that's very close to what the Midrash says. Sense. That's very good. That what you hear, it's what you should listen to the people, is what they say. You should act for the people with your thumb in your hand, and you should walk among the people, is what the rabbis interpret this is. But what about the whole idea of splashing all this blood around? There's a lot of it in all the sacrifices. They're mentioning blood all the time. Yes, Penina. You're muted.
Muted.
You're muted.
I think it's kind of a connection. We see it with it also when Zipporah circumcised their son. She said that this is the connection now to the bride and the groom, that he's one of them, that now they became a part of the nation. It's kind of like connection to how would you say, to flesh and blood, between spiritual and actual, how would you call it?
The bloodline.
Present, actual connection, actual reality.
Okay.
Ancestry.
It's hard to explain, but
Bloodline.
I think it's like the connection.
Okay, Risa.
Yeah, blood is called the life force.
Okay.
So that's what gives you life. When you lose your blood or too much blood, it's death. So it is not a symbol, but it is the life force. It's what makes us live.
It does. And we know that in kashrut, in being kosher, you're not allowed to consume any blood.
You're supposed to drain it,
You
right?
have to strain the blood. You have to salt the actual animal that you're going to consume so that all the blood is removed. You're never allowed to drink or eat anything with blood. And again, perhaps because they don't really explain this ritual of spilling blood all around, it is maybe giving the life force, or just saying that this blood may not be consumed, but it's very ritualistic. So let's again look at this idea of ritual and the power of ritual. Do any of you, I mean, in modern day, it's very hard. Do any of you have any rituals that you perform for any reason in your life to alter the reality or alter the aura or the atmosphere of yourself or where you are? Does anyone do any rituals? Anyone?
I do. I have olive oil, and I put olive oil on my door. Ask for God's angels to guard my door.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Anyone else have any rituals that they?
So we have Shabbat candles. We also, we don't do much on Shabbat, other than maybe Torah study or go to temple when we can, and kissing the mezuzah when we walk in the door.
There's also the power of ritual like tashlich, where you go to the
Right.
We do tashlik as well.
So I'm just saying we have some rituals, but here, ancient Judaism was filled with rituals. People needed ritual to feel the power, the holiness, to be transformed. And in modern life, I don't think and we have the rituals. Actually, there are some rituals. There's Shiva, the ritual of Shiva, where we sit Shiva for 7 days. And it does change you. When you do this outward behavior, it changes you inside. So this whole idea of blood was this ritual that I guess had a lot of significance to people in the ancient world, which we don't really relate to. Penina.
This brings me again to what we talked about last Saturday, about the cherubs and the ark. I think people need a physical, tangible, something physical to see in order to connect to the spiritual. It's hard to just believe and didn't give him anything to connect to this belief. You have to go through something. Even today, we're doing it, the rituals, because that brings us to this point of connecting with the spiritual.
Yes.
You have to have something, because you can, if you don't feel it, it's harder for you to connect. That's about it. You hug when you have to show love, right? So that's physical. You kiss when you want to show love. It's physical. You need something physical to connect to the spiritual.
Thank you. I like that. Risa.
Tradition sometimes spills over into magic and mysticism and superstition. So you have to be aware that when you knock on wood, is that a tradition? Is that superstition? Or is it what Penina is saying is going out for the physical to make something happen, throw salt over your shoulder. Those things are also part of Judaism. Lots of
Well, that's sort of
superstition.
folklore, and not formal ritual, Jewish ritual. It's formal folk. It's for folk ritual.
Well, yeah, but it's in Judaism. It's in our history.
Right.
It's in our history, but
It's in our history, the magic and superstition.
it's like saying Kanai Nahora, which means literally Keneged Ha'ayin Hara, against
Exactly.
evil
The evil
eye.
eye. That was the
Ha'ayin Hara is Kanai Nahora.
horror. Exactly.
So there is that kind of magical, folkloric ritual. And then
There's also rods turning into snakes.
right.
That's magic.
That's
Well, don't they also say that if you knock on wood, you're knocking on the cross? I've heard that one too. I don't know.
but that's different.
I don't know.
Formalized ritual, like when we bow in front of the ark, there's
Then
certain
you show respect.
you show, but it's more
Right.
than that. It's more than that. You're not just showing respect, but you're abasing yourself. You're acknowledging something higher than yourself. And everybody's bowing. It's a whole, and the priestly blessing when they do this and they bless you,
Magic.
which by the way, Leonard Nimoy stole for
Right.
Star Trek. But when the priests are blessing you with this blessing and giving you the priestly blessing, there's a tradition you're not even supposed to look. You're not supposed to see it. It's too powerful that you have to avert your eyes during this ritual. So there is a very strong power of ritual that starts here in the Torah with all of these rituals and continue. Yes, Penina.
I have to say it because look at the deaf hearing impaired people. How do they express their words and their feelings? They use their hands and their mouth and their face and their body. You have to use something physical to get to the spiritual. That's it.
Okay.
How do you explain how do you say you throw a kiss? You're telling the
But
person.
that's not the same as a religious
Well,
ritual.
this is as close as they can get.
Okay, I want to continue. So now I want to look at this Urim and Tumim thing. Okay. The breastplate. The breastplate is known as the Choshen Mishpat, the breastplate of judgment. On it were 12 precious and semi-precious stones arranged in 4 rows of 3. The Torah states that the stone shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12 in their names engraved, each person with his name on it shall be for the 12 tribes. Later at the end of the section, we are told, and Aaron, the high priest, shall carry the names of Israel in the breastplate of judgment in his heart when he enters the holy place as a remembrance before God always. That's not all. In addition to the breastplate itself, there is a mysterious final touch, which students of alumni of Yale will be familiar with. The words Urim and Tumim, often left untranslated as their meaning is obscure. Urim is connected with the Hebrew word or, which means light, and Tumim connected to the word tam, which means simple, perfect, or pure. The symbolism and function is less clear. Okay, and so Rashi says the breastplate in some way atones for mistakes in judgment. But I want to look at this one. It is this part. It is believed that when the Jewish people have a question about an issue, the question is brought to the high priest wearing the choshen. After some sort of ritual or rite, some of the letters incised into the stones on the breastplate light up, spelling out the answer to the question, rendering the judgment. It is understood that the Urim and Tumim in some way placed inside the breastplate are what give it its power. So it's like this magical idea that you ask the priest something and the Urim and the Tumim light up the 12 stones and he can understand the answer from that. What exactly are they? And it was an oracle. is what they were
Yeah.
saying. Brad, did you want to say something about it? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, it evokes the Oracle of Delphi, for example, where the gods spoke through the priestess to the people. So this is an intermediary between God and the people. But what fascinates me about this is this whole emphasis on judgment, because when I think of the justice and judgment, because when I think of the priestly class, that isn't the first thing that comes to my mind, is judgment, justice. Whereas in fact, it's very similar to Plato's Republic, where the guardians are those, the philosopher class of people. Those are the ones who are best equipped to deal with.
You're very popular.
To deal with, it's not me. I'm not popular. They're the ones that are best equipped to deal with matters of justice. So I think that this whole this emphasis on justice in this passage is really kind of surprising to me, because, like I say, when I think of the priestly class, I don't think of justice.
I agree. You think of ritual, performing the sacrifices, sort of, running the temple or the sanctuary. And here they're saying, but what's interesting is it's not, unlike the philosophers who actually had wisdom to render whatever they were going to proclaim or judge, they're saying here that it was these magical,
Magic.
I don't know what they were, accessories or something that were communicating God's word to the priest. And here, whoever has their phone, could they mute?
So in most of our temples or our sanctuaries, our Torahs have some sort of breastplate.
Yes. In fact, after the destruction, I meant to say that the destruction of the temple, the rabbis moved the priestly vestments onto the Torah. Not only does it have a breastplate, it has a robe. It has little bells. It has little bells and fringes on the bottom. It doesn't have straps, but it has those beautiful, I don't even know what they're called. Risa, what are those called? The silver things over the.
I can't think of the name.
I can't think of.
You caught me at the wrong
time.
time.
The crown?
Eitz Chaim. Oh, there's a crown on some of them, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the actual rollers are called the Eitz Chaim, the trees of life.
Right.
The things, the silver decorated.
You're Uranim or something?
I think they're called Rimonim.
That's it. Rimonim.
Yes, thank you.
That's right.
They took all of the clothing of the priest and put it on the Torah, because we no longer had a priestly class to work in the temple. Penina?
Okay. A lot of the Orthodox people, and some even in other classes of belief or practice, they go to the rabbi when they have a problem till today. The rabbi helping them to sort out, like a psychiatrist even sometimes. I know my niece, she's now a mother and maybe even a grandmother already. She's in New York, but they're very Orthodox. Before she got married, she couldn't get married really quickly. They went to the rabbi, you should give her a blessing.
Yes.
And a fast wedding, close wedding. And she did get married. Right. So a lot of people go to the Lubavitcher rabbi in New York.
But the rabbi,
for advice and for requests and stuff till today.
Yes,
so the rabbi is also a judge and a psychiatrist and everything.
Penina, the rabbi consults the Talmud, he consults the commentaries, he consults the Torah, he consults everything. The priest consults nothing. He is wearing this magical breastplate where things are lighting up. And here, Maimonides, even, I want to read you this. For example, when they asked, who shall lead the way for us to fight against the Canaanites? The priest would concentrate on the divine names. So they say the priest had God's
This is
name.
a midrash. In the Torah, they are just calling them people who could see the light, and to mim comes from the word innocent. In other words, they are the one that could give you good judgment.
I know, but
Who
let's
is
just-
Belimum? Someone without any infirmities.
wait a minute. The priest would concentrate on the divine names, which are the Urim, and the letters would light up to his eyes. And when the letters look up to the eyes of the priest, just a minute, he did not know the correct order because they could have said many things. So what they're saying is that he would focus. I mean, we don't know what it was. And I know it's a midrash, but these priests were not knowledgeable in law. Not like the philosophers of Greek times or the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They were not learned in this. Yet they're saying that
they had the 10 Commandments. This is a set of laws. They had it. They had it already.
Everybody had those. Everybody had those.
Well, this is a way of telling what's wrong and what's right.
I agree with
There
you.
was 10. There was 5. Yeah. There was.
Why do you think they didn't just let priests or judges, and later on, after the destruction of the temple, there were judges and prophets who knew the law? Why do you think at this juncture they needed this magical, metaphysical, supernatural way to impart knowledge to the priests? Why do you think?
May I answer that?
All right, raise your hand if you want to say something about that. Ben, I mean.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think it all kind of connects where you've got these robes and the eternal flame, where we talked about how it's going to a special place, you dress up special, or a special moment. It's sort of that metaphysical, magical sort of self-reflection to pray and be in touch with God. Same thing with these magical lights. It adds more of an element of, there's got to be a better word than magic to use, but some kind of spiritual, it's a special thing, it's a special message through these magical lights.
Okay, any other comments about that?
May I speak, Rabbi?
Yeah.
I think it's like what God was romancing the stones. The Lord, his spirit, the Shekinah glory, was romancing those stones to give an answer to the priest, to know what to do. It was not, it was coming from like when we had to march around and the walls, Jericho wall came tumbling down, they had to blow the trumpet. God is always ever present with us, and that was his way of communicating with us, to let them know, because they weren't learning, they had to know, Lord, what do we do? So he had to romance the stones.
Okay, I like that. Yes, Brad.
Well, I come back to the Oracle of Delphi, where the priestess was always a virgin. That was, she was pure. She was pure of body. And in order to deliver the message to the gods, she went into a type of trance, an orgiastic type of trance before speaking. So, she was a human incarnation of these lights, so to speak. And from her mouth came the words of the gods.
And they knew that it wasn't her.
They knew it wasn't her.
It was coming through her. And similarly, it's like the high priest is a channel for God to give his message. And remember, there really wasn't a Torah yet. They had just gotten some laws, there was it was written down or whatever, but you had to make sure that the priest was not the source of the wisdom, but it was coming through the priest. And that gave it a lot more legitimacy. However, it's interesting because Maimonides and Nachmanides, Nachmanides is another person, he's called the Ramban. He was a mystic, he was a Kabbalist, and he was much more spiritual than Maimonides, who was more of a sort of a very into the Greek philosophy, and, he knew all the classics and whatever. And he said that, they both said that the letters would come out and they could be read in a different way. In other words, Nachmanides said the whole Torah was actually written that way, with no letters and no vowels, and that it was us who interpreted it and put it into the proper order to get the right words that we needed, in the same way that the priests would know what the message was, because there are many ways that these letters could be read. So they gave the priests some credit for interpreting the message appropriately through that. So, but it's like they needed this supernatural, it's fascinating, this Urim and Tumim idea and this was all obviously lost, when the destruction of the temple. And I don't even know how, we don't really ever hear about it again, I don't think, in any other place in the text. Did they ever resort to it? It's never referred to it anywhere else. Susan Ehrlich, do you know of any other places?
I think it comes later in terms of war, when they, and I can't specify.
I know the ark, they took the ark with them in terms of war.
Yes, and they said that, I can't specify that, but that the priest would consult the Urim and Thummim.
They would consult them. So,
yes, for the
whether they go to war or not. Well, that's this question: should we go to war or not? So it's fascinating that this is very similar to the rest of the ancient world. You needed these magicians, these prophets, these oracles to tell you what to do. Some, in ancient Rome and maybe Greece, they would open an animal and read the entrails. And right. That, I don't know what they read, but they would interpret from the entrails what you were supposed to do. So it's really, this whole section is kind of literal.
I think it's left over from the times that they were worshiping idols. They needed something tangible to connect. So all this, again, I'm repeating myself, they need something physical, tangible.
And they just come out of Egypt. They just come out of Egypt, which everything was highly ritualized.
Right.
And we know they needed something because they built the golden calf.
Right.
They made the calf because they couldn't imagine. So if they couldn't see God, they needed to see a priest who's really dressed like a god or like a pharaoh. If you think about it, it's similar in clothing to maybe a pharaoh in terms of his appearance, which they could identify with and feel comfortable with, than just Moses in a robe. The last thing I want to say, where we have like we're 1 o'clock. I just want to point out one thing. This is the only Parsha in the Torah where Moses' name is not mentioned. It just says, you shall do this, you shall do that. His name is not mentioned. And the rabbis ask why. And apparently this Parsha comes near the anniversary of Moses' death. And there was this idea that they were preparing, there's two things. They're preparing the Israelites that someday Moses would not be there. And it wouldn't just, and also maybe to give Aaron one Parsha for himself, where Aaron was the center or the focus, because otherwise he's always second to his brother. So this is the one where his name is not mentioned anywhere. And there's a lot of discussion about that because the rabbis pour over it.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yes.
In this chapter, or in the chapter, the Golden Calf, rather, they fault the Israelites very heavily for making a golden calf and for needing one, even though they just came out of Egypt where animals were worshipped, and this is perhaps what they knew. Whereas in the Parsha, in the chapter of Terumah,
yes,
God asks his people to build a concrete place, a building for which they can all go and assemble and be together and worship.
Yeah.
And so my question is this: God surely doesn't need a building and did not need a building. He's omnipresent, omniscient. He certainly, personally, on a personal level, although we don't give him a corporeal form whatsoever, he does not need a place. He does not need something concrete. Yet, The entire chapter is devoted to what drapes they should use, what silks they should use, how many cubits should this be, how many amot should it be from here to here and here to here, exactly, full of the gold they should use and how they should put the gold on, etc., etc. Huge details. Yet, for the golden calf that they build, and I'm not justifying them, I'm just saying for that, they are severely punished.
Well, they worshiped the golden calf. They called it God, as opposed to this is a dwelling place for God. And they say that there was a cloud that was over it, which was, this is what they needed. They needed a house for God. The idea that God did not need a specific dwelling place really didn't come into being until the destruction of the first temple, when they went to Babylonia and they had to rethink, is God still back there houseless and homeless in Judea, in our homeland, or can God be with us? And they reformulated the idea that God could be with you anywhere. But that idea was like a philosophical leap that happened like 600 years later. At that time, and don't forget, this was written by people, and this was written in different pieces about different things, this was written by the priests. Believe me, this was written by the priests. And so they were very concrete about where they were going to work, live, have God's presence. That's different than worshiping an idol, I think. A dwelling place for your God is different. It says, build me a sanctuary and I will dwell there. It says that. Okay, I'm going to just.
I will dwell among you, among you.
Among you,
That's
yes.
the difference.
Yes, I will dwell among you.
At that time, he said already, and I would dwell inside you, within you.
But make me a sanctuary. Now, today we made the sanctuary.
They made the calf already the God. That's the difference.
All right, I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
I want to say one thing, really lighthearted.
Yes.
Okay, you said that the priests had shoes. I don't think they did. I think it's like when Moses had to take his shoes off before the burning bush, and it's like Muslim prayer that's barefoot, and in India, the Orthodox are barefoot in the synagogue.
They were always barefoot, or just?
I think they were barefoot.
Or
just silly, but I think so.
I think they had sandals of some kind, the original Birkenstocks.
Maybe when they performed the rituals and wore that outfit, because Aaron didn't wear that all the time. He wore that.
Right.
So maybe
when you're absolutely communicating with God, you're barefoot.
Abraham,
Thank you, Rabbi.
The first thing he said is take your shoes off.
Take your shoes off.
Okay.
Little thing.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Happy Valentine's Day,
Rams.
everybody.
Bye. Go Rams.
Go Rams. Happy Valentine's Day if you have a Valentine. It's like building a